Alright, everybody, how are we doing today? Real quick before we begin, stop calling Trump Hitler! Quit it with that obvious bullshit. Okay? He has not once, even once, said anything remotely like Hitler. The resemblance is surface level at best. Alright? He has not tried to kill immigrants. He has not said that they should kill immigrants. He has not said that they are inferior to white people or to Americans. He's never said anything of the sort. He's not anything done even remotely Hitlerish, outside of maybe a surface-level, cursory passing resemblance. Stop with that evil Drumpfler shit. It's nonsense. Get your brains out of your asses and back into your heads where they belong. If you've got a head left at this point. Anyway, Reuters says FBI says Russian FaceApp is potential counterintelligence threat. Oh, here we go. Time for more boogeyman Russia. You know, with less GDP than the state of California. The Federal Bureau of Investigation considers any mobile app developed in Russia to be a potential counterintelligence threat. It said on Monday, responding to a U.S. lawmaker's query about face editing photo app, FaceApp. The viral smartphone app saw a surge in popularity this year due to a filter that ages photos of users' faces. Concerns about its Russian provenance prompted the Democratic National Committee to warn the party's 2020 presidential candidates against using it, as well as a call from Democratic U.S. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer for the FBI and the Federal Trade Commission to conduct national security reviews. There is no evidence that FaceApp provides user data to the Russian government, but the FBI, in a letter responding to Schumer, said Moscow's ability to access communications directly via internet service providers makes any app built there risky. Russia's intelligence services maintain robust cyber exploitation capabilities. The FBI said and are able under local laws to remotely access all communications and serves on Russian networks without making a request to ISPs. FaceApp, which launched in 2017, was developed by Wireless Lab, a company based on St. Petersburg. Its chief executive officer, Yaroslav Gonkarov, used to be an executive at Yandex, widely known as Russia's Google. The company has denied selling or sharing user data with third parties, adding that user data is never transferred to Russia, and most images are deleted from its servers within 48 hours of submission. So they say, but let's play devil's advocate and say, well, this sounds familiar to what Russia said when they, or not Russia, Facebook. What Facebook said when they had a similar issue arise. This is classic. This is exactly what Mark Zuckerberg claimed. But I seriously doubt that the Russia tech giant is handling people's security as well as they would like us to think. Wireless Lab is probably just a private company similar to Facebook. Therefore, we don't really know that they're selling data to their government, but they could be. They could be simply selling it to Yandex, since they have a tie to them, and they could be selling it to someone else. But to say that they're immediately selling it to the Russian government, there's really no way to say yay or nay to that. So I suppose being somewhat cautious about that possibility is a good thing. You know, so playing devil's advocate, it actually does sound pretty reasonable. But you have to understand how often Russia gets boogeymaned and turned into this big scary thing. Everyone's doing it now. It's not just the American left. They do it in England, they do it in France, they do it in the Middle East. So many people think Russia is behind so many different things. It's like if it was all true, they wouldn't have time to even run their own damn country. Like, what the hell? Find someone else to blame your bullshit on. I mean, seriously. Oh, but the American left is moving on. They got Ukraine now. Yeah, politics has become an absolute farce in the 21st century. It's been an absolute farce. It's farcical. And speaking of farces, it is time again for the second article in this story, since these are nice and short. the EU leaders, or as I like to call them, the European Onion, because they make me cry, are going to push for climate neutrality by 2050. There is apparently documented evidence for this. European Union leaders meeting in Brussels next week will push to agree to put the block on net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. Their draft joint statement showed on Monday heralding a bitter fight looming at their gathering. The December 12th-13th summit of the bloc's national leaders will aim to endorse the objective of achieving a climate-neutral EU by 2050, according to the document seen by Reuters. Previous attempts, however, were blocked by Poland, Hungary, and the Czech Republic, who rely on highly polluting coal. They have previously said they oppose climate neutrality by 2050, for fear cutting greenhouse emissions will stifle their economies. You can't have this many nations working together in a quote-unquote trade alliance, more like a continental superstate, really, and actually have them get along. These European politicians have a history of constantly bickering with one another, like old married couples or even disobedient children. Kindergartners, even. It's ridiculous. I'm perfectly comfortable in my whiteness and having European ancestry. But this shit's ridiculous. Over here on our end of the pond, we see you guys doing this shit, and I want to laugh and cry all at once when I see this shit. It's like, what? This is part of the reason I think why the EU fundamentally is so useless when they try and do anything, is because they can't agree on anything. You just can't have that many perspectives on life and that many ideas in one room without some kind of diplomacy. But you guys aren't deploying diplomacy. You're just shouting over each other the entire time. Now imagine when Nikita Khrushchev was still alive and Russia was part of the EU. Good Lord, imagine that. Whew. But to convince the reluctant camp, the draft summit conclusions refer to just and socially balanced transition. The European Investment Bank's announcement to unlock €1 trillion worth of green investment until 2030. The need to ensure energy security and competitiveness vis-a-vis foreign powers not pursuing such climate goals. The draft prepared in advance of the leaders' discussions may still change, but it will eventually need unanimous backing of all EU national leaders for there to be agreement at the summit. The bloc's new Executive European Commission also aims to push for climate neutrality by mid-century and wants to make the EU's 2030 climate targets more ambitious. Current targets envisage cutting the EU's greenhouse gas emissions by 40% by 2030, from 1990 levels. The new commission, led by Germany's Ursula von der Leyen, hopes to raise the goal to at least 50%. Now look, here's my reason why I think that the anthropogenic global warming issue that the left likes to push is bullshit. It's literally the exact same Al Gore style nonsense where they predicted the end of the world in 2012, just reskinned with a new name, calling it climate change, but it's still just the same old global warming nonsense. Alright? Climate change is an inevitable process that the Earth goes through. The fossil record clearly shows that it has happened before, and it will happen again. Human beings have no effect on it. It is a simple process that the Earth goes through. What, you think the Earth always looked like this, or always will look like this? No. You look out in nature, and you definitely see a definite narrative that if something stands still, it does not survive. Life cannot continue if it just stays in one state or stands still. Change, as painful as it is necessary for the continuing of life. It's important. Therefore, climate change is merely a continuation of the life of the Earth. A painful change, but a necessary one. You know how many ice ages there were? More than one. We're probably going to end up having another. It was going to happen sooner or later. I'm not worried about climate change. I say bring it on. It was going to happen anyway. But as far as air pollution is concerned, now there is where my issue lies. I mean, Beijing is a death sentence if you have asthma. Hell, Beijing might even give you asthma, for crying out loud. And now you got places in India cropping up where the air pollution is so high that I don't even understand how anyone can even stand to live there. It's insane. That's where human activity should be concerned. Not this climate change, which no matter what we do is going to happen anyway. Because it's a natural process. You are messing with forces you do not understand. But as for the buildup of CO2 in the atmosphere and the creation of air pollution, that is something we should worry about. I say, let's start planting trees like crazy. Let's just plant a bunch of fucking trees wherever we can. Because the plants will then consume the CO2 and produce more oxygen. And then our oxygen supply will increase. That will go a long way to solving the air pollution issue. Plants can absorb that shit with little to no difficulty. In fact, some plants even biologically need it. So, if you're worried about the excess CO2 in the atmosphere, make sure that there's excess plants to balance it out. Plain and simple. It's the simplest solution. Usually the best. That's one application of good old Occam's razor. Anyway. Peace.